Hello everyone and welcome to my channel, My Binational Life. This will be the English version of a video I just recorded completely in Spanish about 10 things that I did to learn Spanish. So this will be for those who are learning not just Spanish but any language. Anything that I have experienced to help me become bilingual may help you as well. So let's commence after these messages. First of all, I don't pretend to speak Spanish fluently, but I can definitely carry on a conversation. So how did all this start? Well, let's go back to the very beginning. My parents raised me in a neighborhood in Newark, New Jersey that was multi-ethnic. So I grew up around people from all over the planet. So I actually have a global sense of thinking. But anyway, on the east side of our house, we have people from different parts of the Caribbean. We have people from Puerto Rico living on the right, and then on the left side, we had people from Cuba or of Cuban descent who were living there. So my friends at that time, when I was young, would speak to me in English, but they would switch over to Spanish and speak to their parents. Now, I've always wanted to know what they were saying, so that started my curiosity and led me on a path to learning Spanish. And that's actually led to me being completely bilingual to this day. So that I really appreciate the curiosity I had back then because it made me what I am today. Yay. So starting with step number 1. And remember, I'm translating this back to English because I'm reading this in Spanish, but I'm translating it back to English. So if I get all mixed up, that happens. All right, the first thing, I studied for 3 years in high school. The first 2 years, my what do they call it now? Sophomore or junior? Freshman, sorry. My freshman and sophomore year, that's how long it's been. I studied with 2 Americans or United States citizens or people who are born in the United States. So they taught me Spanish, and they spoke it pretty well looking back. And then the third year, my junior year, I studied with a woman who was from the Middle East, Mrs. Parges. She was very nice lady. So that set me on. So basically, that's where I learned the vosotros, which they really only use in Spain, from my understanding. And I'm still rusty on that because I don't use that in the other parts of Latin America, just Spain. So it is what it is. So that was number 1. Number 2. Right after graduating from high school, I started classes in conversational Spanish with a woman from Bogota, Colombia. Aura Mas. She was my teacher, and she did a wonderful job. Thanks, Aura. Muchísimas gracias. Anyway, the first day of class, I had mispronounced the word Spanish or español. Did you hear the español? Well, what I said, instead of español, I said español, because that's what I heard from my friends, español. Then the first thing she said, and I'll translate this back to English, is this: no, in this class, you're going to pronounce the S. So I never had a problem with it after that. And that's what I like. I like someone to teach me, to correct me. And that's something that I urge any friends that are helping you, help them to correct your pronunciation from the get-go before it becomes a bad habit. Number 3, while I was taking these classes, I started listening to music in Spanish, and that's back in the days of the vinyl records as well as CDs. Remember them? So I would listen to Menudo and I'm looking at my notes so I won't forget. I listened to Menudo, Chayanne, Timberiche, Flan, Luis Miguel, Emmanuel, sorry, and some others. And I used to watch it on this program called Sábado Gigante, or Big Saturday, Giant Saturday. So that's where I used to watch it. So that was number 3. I would listen to music. So listen to all your music, and now it's very easy to find mixtures of Spanish and English in the same song these days. That is amazing. That how much things have changed since the 80s. Anyway, number 4. I also started watching the Spanish versions of soap operas, which are called telenovelas, or televised novels. That's the best way I can describe it. The reason why they're called telenovelas and not soap operas, well, first of all, soap operas in English came from the days when they advertised soap powder in Procter and Gamble products, and that's basically where the soap part came in. But telenovelas are really televised novels, so they have a beginning and an end, unlike Young and the Restless, which is still going on after God only knows how many years. Just saying. And All My Children, and Days of Our Lives. I think that's still there, yeah. But that's my point. And they have one after the other, so you never are watching the same show generation after generation after generation. You're just watching a beginning and an end. All right, and they're over the top, by the way, and that's where I learned watching the people interact and listening to their conversation without subtitles. There were no subtitles back then in those days, but I would try my hardest to listen to what they were saying and imitate not only what they were saying, but how they said it in my own conversations with people. So that's not only how I learned to converse, but also how I learned how to get mad dramatically. Because everything in telenovelas are very exaggerated. I mean, remember Ugly Betty, the American version? That's just a taste of what the telenovelas are like. Trust me, everything's over the top. All right, so, well, the equivalent to that over the topness would be these reality shows. Case closed. All right, number 5. Oh, wait a minute. Number 4, I never did finish with the names of the telenovelas that I liked was Quinceanera, which is sort of like a Sweet 16 party for a girl, but in the Latin American community, it starts at 15. So quince is 15, and thus Quinceanera. So that's the actual party when she becomes a woman. Kirpa de tres mujeres. I have no idea how to translate that because I still don't know what kirpa means. But that was I think, if I'm not mistaken, a telenovela from Venezuela. I think. It could be Colombian. I don't know. If you know, please let me know in the description. And also, what the heck does kirpa mean? I still haven't found that definition, but I'd love to know. I used to watch that all the time. Let's see, and number 5 now. So apart from the Spanish course, I was able to develop a Penpal relationship with somebody in Spain, and this is long before Facebook, Instagram, anything instantaneous. Back in the days, we had a pen, paper, envelope, and a stamp, and that's how we did it. So basically, I would write to him, he would write to me, and I would try my best to understand what he wrote. So what I did, I translated every word, every verb, every expression or saying, modismos, from Spanish to English, and then I tried to respond in Spanish to the best of my ability back then. And that's when I quickly learned you cannot translate literally from one language to the other, not just English, but any language, one to the other, because literal translations do not make sense. Case in point, in Spanish, they say tomar el pelo, pulling your hair. In English, we say you're pulling my leg. So you understand now that that wouldn't make any sense if you said tomando mi pierna. So that wouldn't make any sense. You actually have to learn the thought and translate the thought, not the words. So now you know. That was number 5? Yes. So what I did long before Google Translate, long before Microsoft Translate, Duolingo, Rosetta Stone, all of that, before any of that was even thought about, I literally had a dictionary for words, a dictionary for verbs with all the conjugations, as well as a dictionary for expressions, modismos or idioms. And that helped a lot, but doing it the hard way cemented all that in my head, because this is why. First, I learned how to write, read, and listen, because I was looking at the telenovelas and listening. So reading, writing, listening, and then trying to respond. And that's the key. Once you learn how to communicate, even on a child level, you'll go up from there, because that's how it all starts. That's how it all starts. You have to make an effort to talk. And the more you do it, the more your tongue gets trained to pronounce it a certain way. And also your brain starts to cement the two, and you start thinking in the language instead of translating things in your head. That will waste a lot of time translating. So just another point. Okay, number 6. After completing the Spanish course, I actually moved to Puerto Rico. And why? Because I had the opportunity and I took it. Simple as that. I was in my 20s and I was young and had hair. I was thin. I basically had a wonderful time there. And while I was there, I made a lot of friends that supposedly didn't speak any English at all. And what that did for my brain, it caused me to have to figure out how to say things in Spanish that for me were effortless in English. So I got used to having to think, oh, how would I say that in Spanish? How would I say this in Spanish? What's the equivalent words in Spanish? That's how I learned it. Another thing I did while in Puerto Rico, I listened to the radio at night, and I didn't include this in the Spanish version, but because I forgot, because this is not scripted, by the way. I would listen to the radio in Spanish, and they had some kind of talk show, not really a talk show, like a call-in show where people would call in and just chat, and I would listen to the way they interacted, and that helped me while I'm asleep. That came into my subconscious, so my brain was trained to just accept the language as it comes instead of having to listen and try to translate every single word and then process and then think in English how I'm going to respond, then translate that word. So see how time consuming that was? So that actually helped my brain to assimilate to the spoken Spanish. It made a big difference too. So eventually I got used to it. When I first started, it was rough trying to figure out what they were saying, because if you've ever spoken to someone from the Caribbean, specifically Puerto Rico, Cuba, or Dominican Republic, they speak very fast, very fast. They cut the words in half, they swallow their S's. So once you get used to that, then you're good, you know. But it took a long time for me to go from Colombian Spanish, which is very clear, in my opinion. Don't dislike that, but for me it's very clear, Colombian Spanish. And so then having to learn Puerto Rican, Cuban, Dominican Spanish, that was a big chore for me. Well, not chore, but it was a very hard thing for me to deal with. But I did it, I learned it, and I actually can do that from listening to people from different countries. I learned to ask what their vocabulary is for certain words, what certain words mean in other countries. Because what means one thing in Puerto Rico means something else in Mexico, means something else in Costa Rica. So you just have to learn the differences and the nuances of the different countries. That's just the way it is. Just like we have in English, people from the north and the people from the south, people from the west, people in the Midwest. There's different ways of saying things. Like I'm explaining to my wife who's learning English, the word where I'm from, it's oil, O-I-L. Down here, where I live in Texas, it's all, as if it's spelled A-L-L. And I understand that in the northeast, really up, Vermont and all that, it's Earl. Correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah. So just different ways of pronouncing the same thing. And different expressions. Here, if you're getting ready to do something, here in Texas, you say, I'm fixing to do it. And in North Carolina, you say, I'm finna do it. So there you go. So that was where I was, number 6. That was number 6. Number 7, número 7. After 6 years of living in Puerto Rico, I came back to the United States to live and restart my life. And at that point, I had gotten so used to, conversing in Spanish that I wanted to continue, but I didn't have anyone to speak with. So what did I do? Telenovelas, the soap operas in Spanish all over again. And what I did, I just basically continued listening and trying to imitate what I was hearing. That's the best way I can tell you I learned to converse. And two of my favorite telenovelas were both the Telemundo version and the Chilean version of La Casa de Al Lado, or The House Next Door, and Donde está Elisa? Where's Elisa? And they're very dramatic, over the top. Yes, the Telemundo version was nice and slick and new and all that, but the Chilean version, from what I understand was Chile, was way more dramatic and more out there. You didn't have to censor as much, but that's back then. Now I would prefer the Telemundo version, and actually I don't really watch telenovelas at all because I don't want to be addicted to that drama anymore. Bad enough that I have to deal with my wife watching reality shows like 90 Días. Don't even get me started. Anyway, so that's what I did, but eventually, number 8, I eventually started a job where I've been for the last 24 years, going on 25, and I was able to at least make some friendships with my coworkers who were from the different parts of Latin America. So I would converse with them in Spanish, and but the boss or our managers decided that's not a good thing for us to do in front of the customer. Not a problem. So we spoke English in front of the customer. As soon as the customer was gone, we switched right back to Spanish. And even though I am way more fluent in English because that's my first language, I think I can carry on a conversation, and I understand about 90% of what I'm hearing and understanding. I don't claim 100% fluency. Again, that takes time. That takes a lot of time and effort. So that was number 8. Number 9. This is my favorite part, and I had to refer to my notes because I don't want to miss anything. So I had the privilege of traveling the world, and in most the places that I've traveled, I would prefer to travel where I can actually speak to people. So I have been to Mexico 3 times, Cozumel once, Mexico City once, and Guadalajara. The Guadalajara wasn't intentional; that was a diversion. I was flying to Chile, but we landed in Guadalajara because of an issue that we had, and so it's 3 times. Speaking of Chile, I've been to Chile at least 6 to 7 times. Santiago, Chile, Santiago, Vitacura, Las Condes, Valparaiso, and I think there's some others that I can't remember. But I have very fond memories of Chile. I have lots of friends there. I have 2 dishes which I highly recommend, and I'll say it in Spanish because that makes more sense. Pastel de choclo. Choclo is how they say corn in Chile, by the way. Maíz, elote, it's all the same. Different people use different words, but choclo is how they say it in Chile. Oh my God, it's really corn casserole. That's the version in English. It's delicious, but you have to have the big kernel corn, not the little bitty ones that we have here in the States. But you can get those in the Latin American supermarkets. Just look for the really big corn kernels. So pastel de choclo, and since everybody who knows me knows I love hot dogs, they have their version of hot dogs over there, which is very famous, and they call it a completo. A completo is a hot dog, huge by the way, and it has mayonnaise, guacamole, and tomatoes, chopped tomatoes. So if you ever go to Santiago, Chile, or anywhere in Chile, just ask for a completo, and they'll know exactly what you're talking about. So just those 2 things I want you to remember about Chile. Oh, and also, I was there when that 8.8 earthquake hit in Valparaiso. I was out just there like an hour or so before. And I don't ever want to go through another earthquake like that again. So trust me, that was not fun, and it just wasn't fun. That's all I got to say. 8.8. All right, after Chile, and I still went back. After Chile, I've been to Colombia. Actually, I went to Colombia first. Colombia, Bogota. Before I went to Bogota, my friends from the United States kept warning me, oh, they're going to kidnap you, they're going to blow dust in your face and hypnotize you. I am not that important. Trust me. I was not worried about that. 'Cause I don't deal with politics. I was not a politician or any governmental official. I don't influence on anything. What in the world were they going to do to me? And nobody would rescue me anyway if they did. Say, who? You have your? We don't care. Just kill them. I don't care. Anyway, that didn't happen. I'm just exaggerating. Sorry, it's the telenovelas. Anyway, I went there and found people who were studious, who were hardworking, who were clean and very industrious, and their children had the best manners I've ever seen in my life. And they could definitely teach some of these kids here in the States that talk back to their parents, that they can learn a lesson from the people over there in Colombia. Let me tell you, respect for the adults. That's what we need these days. Don't get me started. Anyway, Colombia I went to 3 times, Bogota. I went to Costa Rica 3 times, and twice to San Jose. I think it was twice. Yes, San Jose, and then once to Liberia. And I'm saying it with an American accent instead of Liberia. So Liberia, I went to. Beautiful town. Love it. I've been to Spain twice. I've only been to Madrid. But I can tell you, while I was in Madrid, I was able to try for the first time churros with the thick chocolate dip. Oh my God, that is awesome. And my second trip, I literally ate a leg of a pig. It was huge. It was good. Sorry, vegetarians or vegans or both. So yeah, my next trip to Spain hopefully will be to Barcelona and to Valencia, Vale. So I hope to go there. And Barcelona is where I would like to go first. Oh, that was my mother-in-law on my WhatsApp. Sorry. So after Spain, I've been to Argentina, Buenos Aires. I would love to go to Cordoba one day, or Cordoba. I've been to Venezuela, Caracas, and then I actually drove a car in Venezuela to Maracay. Very nice town, mountainous area. Oh my God, it's beautiful. It's just a shame that the Venezuelans are going through what they're going through. So give them some love, give them some support. And, I'm really sorry for what's going on over there. It's unimaginable. Panama, the other extreme. Panama is like a New York of Central America. Oh my God, that is the most prosperous place I have ever seen in Latin America. They have Uber. We had a wonderful time. There was a 3-floor mall. It was, oh my God, we still didn't finish seeing that mall because it was just huge. Very, very nice place. I would go back there in a heartbeat. The one drawback to all that prosperity, folks, unfortunately, they have the worst traffic jams I have ever seen. Think Los Angeles traffic jam with 3 lanes. There you go. That's all I got to say. But yeah, that's the only negative thing I can say about Panama. The traffic, Panama City, that's horrible congestion. But outside of that, wonderful place. Another place that has Uber is Guatemala. I was very surprised, but my wife and I went to spend the weekend in Guatemala City. We didn't venture out, but because we were on different airlines at the time, she was still living outside the United States. So she flew into Guatemala on Copa, and I flew on American into Guatemala. So we met in the middle and had a wonderful time there. Very nice place. We went to La República Dominicana, the Dominican Republic. We stayed in Punta Cana and had a wonderful time. That's where we celebrated our first anniversary. From what I can remember, I think it was our first anniversary. We just had our second, and we didn't go anywhere. Anyway, of course, there's Nicaragua. So that was number 9. Now, talking about Nicaragua, step number 10. I married a woman from Nicaragua, from Managua, Nicaragua. And I cannot tell you how many times I have been to Nicaragua during our courtship and after our marriage, because she wasn't able to come into the United States until January of this year. So all this time, I've been going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And that was not cheap at all. But love costs, right? Anyway, so since she's here, she's learning English, and what we've decided to do is, since we normally speak to each other in Spanish, since she's trying to learn English, I've made it a point to try and say simple things in English and converse with her in English, and she's picking it up very quickly. She just needs more practice. So we are actually making an effort to speak more English at home, especially if it's something simple. Something complicated, we'll switch back to Spanish. Not a problem. But yes, so if you're learning any language, my suggestion is, those were the 10 steps. If you're learning any language, I suggest, more than anything, look the words up. If you don't know a word, look it up. If you don't know an expression, there's dictionaries for expressions or idioms. There's dictionaries for verbs on how to conjugate. There's dictionaries for just general words. The advantage of learning Spanish, however, over any language that I've ever tried to learn, is that the vowels are the same no matter what. It's a, e, I, o, u, always. And that is awesome. Another thing that makes Spanish easier is that everything is spelled exactly the way it sounds, with a couple of exceptions. But you know, they don't, unlike English, where you have all these letters just sitting there for decoration, and you never have the same pronunciation of the vowels, and that's what makes it so difficult for anybody who's learning English from any language, not just Spanish. But give them a break, because learning English can be complicated because we have so many inconsistencies that they don't have in those other languages. Now, on the other end, on my end for Spanish, what I still have problems with to this day is I can never remember if something is male or female, because in Spanish they have gender. So a book is male, referred to in the male gender, and a door is female. And certain things are referred to in the female gender, certain things are referred to in the male gender. So that's something that we don't have in English. And another thing, some things are for us reversed. Like, for example, if you like something, in Spanish you don't like it, it pleases you. That's the, if you literally translate, that's the way it is. So that's another thing. But every language has something that is unique about it. Some pluses, some minuses, but that's just the way it is in any language. The effort is, if you're trying to learn it and speak it. Use whatever you learn, whatever new word, try to say it, try to pronounce it, and try to listen to conversations. Well, not on purpose if it's none of your business, but try to engage with people is what I'm trying to say. Use Rosetta Stone if it'll help you. Use Duolingo. Duolingo's free. Use the apps. Don't lean on them don't rely on them for everything. Use your brain, because your brain will retain a lot more than you can believe. But if you get stuck, sure, use the apps. But anyway, I just wanted to give you that advice. And my suggestion is, those who are learning English, you may not understand them, but give them some patience as they're trying to make the effort to communicate with you in English. And if you are trying to communicate in Spanish when you're on holiday, when you're trying to visit other countries, they will appreciate that you're trying to do it in their language. So we're all connected. So that's all I had to say for today, and I just want to give you that advice. Speak, learn, and try to communicate. And remember, we're all connected. Bye.